Let's do Michael in Florida. How you doing, Michael?
Hi guys, I'm doing all right. Um, so yeah, I'm a theist, which I say loosely because I really feel like I'm in a position of like deconstructing my faith. Um, I actually I actually came on the show months ago talking about another subject, but tonight I wanted to ask if you guys have ever heard of a Dr. Richard Gallagher, and I wanted to know what your guys' position or what your thoughts are on when people talk about accounts of, like, say, demon possession, where supernatural things start happening, like the person has quote unquote hidden knowledge or starts speaking other languages. Because Richard Gallagher is a board certified psychiatrist who says that he's been approached by the Exorcist community or something like that of the Roman Catholic Church, and he's consulted on different exorcisms. And they claim that before they declare something a demon possession, which would require an exorcist, they go through like a rigorous what's the word I'm looking for, testing to see it's not just like something psychological wrong with the person. So in the process of deconstructing my faith, this is something that usually kind of vibes as one of the more difficult things for me to just sort of put away, because I've been looking at stuff like Myth Vision podcasts where I see different things like prophecy and all the other articles of faith are kind of on weak legs, if you ask me. But this particular one, when it comes to like demon possession, supernatural events, at least accounts of such, I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that.
Well, I could say that so I think somebody has either labeled him, he or someone else has labeled himself as the world's foremost expert on demon possession. And I find that rather curious, because it's like saying I'm the world's foremost expert on fairies when there isn't evidence for it. So you have a number of things where it's nice that you have a psychiatrist, but the phenomenon, even you listed it, you're like, oh, well, there's these things that are supernatural, like people having knowledge that they shouldn't know. First of all, I don't know how you know that somebody has knowledge that they shouldn't know. And second of all, if they did have it, I don't know how you conclude that the cause of that is supernatural. There's a problem with any claim of anything supernatural, which is why nothing in the entire history of the world has ever been demonstrated to be actually supernatural in origin, ever. And so when you have somebody who's, oh, I'm a doctor and I work with exorcists and I exorcise demons. Well, that's cool, bro, but where's the evidence? I don't want stories. I don't want to hear, oh, I went in and here was this person who started speaking in a dead language. Well, how do you know? And how do you know what they knew ahead of time? Because I'm pretty sure that we don't follow people for their entire life waiting for them to need an exorcism.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at it from the psychiatric perspective, there's no like blood test you can do or scan you can put someone through that will tell you what knowledge they have or will test for psychiatric diseases or psychological diseases necessarily, right? Like most of the psychiatric exam is based on asking people questions and observing their responses. And you as the psychiatrist, for example, make observations about how a person answers the question and what they look like and their appearance and demeanor and all this sort of thing. And you try to draw conclusions based on that. But ultimately, it's not like just because someone's a psychiatrist and they do a psychological evaluation that it means necessarily that they can prove that there's a demon being there, or they can even rule out necessarily psychiatric disease. You could theoretically be deemed, not you could be deemed that you don't have a psychological condition or a psychiatric condition if you just act totally normal, except for that you have a demon possession, right? You could fake it and you would pass that test.
Yeah, I'm wondering what the actual evidence is and how. So there's a big problem I've talked about before. I talked about a minute ago, is that even if you demonstrate a phenomenon that you don't have an explanation for, you are not justified in saying, well, since we can't explain it right now, it must be demon possession or it must be supernatural. That is fallacious reasoning. And I've not seen anything from him, Dr. Gallagher, or anyone else that doesn't fall prey to that. They essentially are so in love with the fact, I'm one of the world's most knowledgeable experts on psychological conditions, and I don't have any other explanation, therefore it must be demons. And I know that you can, in much the same way I've said prayer works, because my example of you being stuck in a cave in, if you're praying, it calms you down and you use less oxygen. And it's not the prayer that itself that does it, it's the calming down that allows you to have a longer period of time to be rescued. Similarly, if you are convinced that you are possessed by a demon, an exorcism can be the placebo to get you over that hump in some cases. And so, while I've heard of this, I don't see sufficient evidence for that. And if there were, I would say that somebody would have a Nobel Prize for discovering and demonstrating the truth of demon possession. And scientific journals would be writing up peer-reviewed research on how we can know that this person over here was possessed by a demon, in the same way that they would write up this person over here had, cancer.
Right, because one thing that I found strange, because I first heard of Dr. Gallagher from a Yahoo a Yahoo News video, and I also saw an article about him on CNN. And when some of his critics, call for proof of different things, one thing that I found that was, very sketchy or dubious, if anything, was when people called for proof that people have levitated or something like that, because Dr. Gallagher says that he himself has never witnessed a levitation, but people that he knows have said that they've seen it. And whenever people call for proof, he says something to the effect of, well, demons are devious beings that don't want to, they know they're being recorded. I'm like, that just sounds like sort of, what's the word?
Bullshit.
Sort of like hiding away from the bird. Yeah, bullshit. It sounds like
it's a post hoc rationalization. So what you're and it's good for you to catch it, Michael, because what you're doing is you're saying, if this were true, we would expect to see this evidence. And their answer is, the reason you don't see that evidence is because the demons are just really devious. And it's the same thing for God. If God existed, we would expect to see certain things within reality. And when we don't see those things, they say, oh, that's because, God's hiding. Well, God's the all-time champion of hide and seek, right up there with demons.
Yeah, and I think we get this a lot. And this particular post hoc rationalization with God and demons and whatever else. But ultimately, I think if you come down to it, you say, okay, so maybe God's hiding, but if he is, then we can't conclude that he exists one way or the other, right? We can't conclude anything from a lack of evidence, which is essentially what these people are trying to do, right?
Right. That's what this feels like to me. Because, like I said, the whole testimonies about demon possession and whatnot is usually one of the more difficult things for me, is kind of dismiss, if you will, when it comes to different dogmatic things that the church says. But yeah, it's like sometimes the lack of proof and then the reasoning for that it feels dubious. But I don't know, some part of me, I suppose maybe just my religious conditioning from the time from my childhood, just causes me to I don't know, be troubled by those accounts, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it is, though. It's the way religions work. If you were brought up with, hey, this is possible, and you say, oh, here's a doctor who's saying that he's bought into it, it makes things seem like it's more plausible. But you've already caught on to the fact that they're dodging away from evidence. And what we have is a bunch of anecdotes in the complicated area that is mental health. Because it's not like we see, demon possessions where somebody has their skin, popping off, flailing around and becoming a monster and biting at other people. Nothing physical like that. It's stuff that happens in the brain.
And remember what demon possession used to be, right? People used to think that what we now understand as epileptics, people who are having epileptic seizures, they thought that was demon possession, right? So maybe over time we'll find that, what people currently think are demon possessions turns out to be something real that we can study. But until we have that evidence of something that actually exists, then I think we have to be skeptical about this.
All right. Okay, then, cool. I don't want to hold too much of you guys' time then. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks. And keep asking questions. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the call. It's difficult quite often to kind of pin down theistic claims. And in the process of asking the questions about what do you believe and why, and trying to get people, I think my biggest source of frustration is when people don't answer the question. And I'm going to try to ease back on that just a little bit, because I've always considered what I'm about to say to be dismissive and arrogant and patronizing. But once you've been indoctrinated into a religion and into a type of fallacious reasoning, when you're asked the questions that would expose them, religions tend to put up a protective barrier in your brain so that when I say, why not this, they answer a completely different question than the one that was asked. And while that's incredibly frustrating for me, because like if you would just answer the question that I asked, we would get right to the end of this. That isn't always going to happen.